One of the most beloved renovation crews on American television was quietly investigated by the federal government. While new episodes were still airing, nobody stopped the cameras. Nobody announced it. The show just kept going. And 3 years later, the full story is far more complicated than anything that ever made it onto the screen. That crew is the Maine Cabin Masters: Chase Morrill, his sister Ashley, her husband Ryan Eldridge, and childhood friends Matt Dixie Dix and Jared Jedi Baker. And by the time you reach the end of this video, you'll understand why the story of what really happened to each of them is actually a story about what television almost never gets right. The first thing you need to understand about this show is that nothing about it was assembled. That's the detail that gets glossed over in every surface-level recap. Most reality TV renovation crews are cast. People apply, audition, and get hired. The Maine Cabin Masters were not that. These 5 people had been working side by side in the woods of Maine for years, in some cases decades, before anyone pointed a camera at them. Chase Morrill grew up in Augusta, Maine. His father, Eric Morrill, was a contractor who built things with his hands and taught his kids to do the same. Chase didn't go to construction school. He graduated from the College of the Atlantic and went straight back to what he knew: rebuilding and restoring abandoned structures in rural Maine. Ashley, his older sister, was already in design. Ryan Eldridge had known the family for years, was deeply embedded in the Kennebec County construction world, and eventually married Ashley in 2016. Jared Baker, the man fans would come to know as Jedi, grew up in Gardner, Maine, the same stretch of the Kennebec River Valley where Dixie grew up in Augusta. These weren't co-workers who became friends. They were friends who became co-workers. When Eric Morrill died of cancer in 2014, Chase didn't walk away from the trade his father built. He doubled down. 2 years later, Chase filmed a pilot episode at a pondside camp in Vassalboro, Maine. No one had any particular expectation for it. It was a 10-episode first season on the DIY network, built around a simple premise: take a dilapidated Maine camp, restore it with as little waste as possible, and hand it back to the family who owns it. Season 1 became the top-rated show on DIY network in the United States. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. By season 3, Maine Cabin Masters was pulling more than 3.5 million viewers. That number matters because of what it means. This show, about 5 tradespeople in flannel renovating old cabins in a state that most of the country couldn't find on a map, was outperforming glossy renovation shows with much larger budgets and much more manufactured drama. The reason wasn't production value, it was the opposite. Viewers sensed, correctly, that what they were watching wasn't staged. When Chase argued about a budget overrun, that was a real budget overrun. When Dixie disappeared into a corner to do finish work for 4 hours without saying a word to anyone, that was just what Dixie did. When Ashley walked through a design plan with a cabin owner, she was applying a graphic design background she'd built over years before the show existed. Nothing about it felt performed. There's a detail about Ryan Eldridge that most viewers never picked up on. He and Dixie, Matt Dix, were born on the same day, 2 years apart. Their families had been close since childhood. Gina, the woman who would later become Dixie's wife, had been part of that same circle since before she and Dixie started dating. This wasn't a TV family. This was an actual network of people who had grown up together along the same stretch of river in central Maine, and the show just happened to put cameras on them while they worked. The format never really changed. Each episode begins with Chase introducing his crew to a new cabin, walking them through the budget and deadline, and then stepping back to let the work happen. The cabins are always in rough shape, the timelines are always tight, and somehow they always finish. But here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. In 2022, while new episodes of Maine Cabin Masters were still airing, the United States Environmental Protection Agency formally moved against the show's production company. Kennebec Property Services LLC, the entity behind the Kennebec Cabin Company, faced allegations of violating the federal renovation, repair, and painting rule, known as the RRP rule. The violations centered on 5 separate renovation projects the crew had conducted in 2020. The specifics matter here because this wasn't a minor paperwork dispute. Homes built before 1978 in the United States often contain lead-based paint. Federal law requires that contractors working on those homes assign a certified lead renovator to each project, provide homeowners with specific EPA information about lead hazards, maintain documentation of compliance, and perform the work using certified personnel. According to the EPA's complaint, the Maine Cabin Masters crew failed to meet several of those requirements across 5 properties in the towns of Belgrade, Manchester, Oakland, West Gardner, and Whitefield. The investigation had begun in mid-2021. By October 2022, a settlement was reached. Kennebec Property Services did not admit guilt, but the company paid a civil penalty of $16,500. More significantly, the settlement required the company to obtain proper lid renovation certification, which they had not held at the time of the violations, and to dedicate airtime to educating viewers about lid safety. At least 3 episodes of an upcoming season were required to address the issue on camera. The From the Woodshed podcast was required to produce a dedicated episode on EPA lead safety measures. No individual cast member was personally named in the legal action. The case was against the company, but because the company and the show are effectively inseparable, the Kennebec Cabin Company is what Maine Cabin Masters is. The impact on the show's reputation was real. Other renovation shows had faced similar enforcement actions. 2 Chicks and a Hammer, Magnolia Homes, and Rehab Addict had all settled comparable RRP violations with the EPA. But the Maine Cabin Masters case was unusual in one specific way. The settlement's educational component was more extensive than in comparable cases. The EPA named the show directly in its press release and cited the specific responsibility that renovation television carries when it comes to modeling safe practices for a viewing audience. The show did not lose a single viewer over it. Season after season, the numbers held. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got, until now. When fans talk about departures from Maine Cabin Masters, the name that comes up most often is Lance. Lance Gatcombe was a regular presence in the show's early seasons, a comical, unpredictable builder who became a fan favorite for reasons that had nothing to do with carpentry. He made donuts for motorboat crews while they were mid-build. He brought an energy to the show that was genuinely hard to replicate. And then, after season 3, he was gone. No explanation was ever offered, no farewell episode, no statement from the production. Lance simply stopped appearing, and the question of why has never been publicly answered. His departure remains, as of 2026, the most searched, unanswered question in the Maine Cabin Masters fan community. But there's a second departure that gets far less attention, and the arc of where that person ended up is one of the more interesting post-show stories in the reality TV renovation space. Eric Donahue was another crew member who appeared in early seasons before stepping away from the show. After leaving, Donahue used what's known as a business search fund, an acquisition vehicle typically associated with MBA graduates, to identify and purchase a paving company in Maine. In his first year running the company, revenue grew by 40%. That detail isn't just a fun footnote. It says something about the kind of people this show attracted. These were skilled tradespeople with real business instincts, not performers. The ones who stayed built a restaurant. The one who left built a separate company. Both outcomes make sense for the same reason. The talent was real before the cameras arrived, and it remained real after. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. Ashley Morrill has been the most visible female presence in Maine Cabin Masters since the pilot episode. She's the one who walks through a gutted cabin shell and describes what it's going to feel like when people live there again. She handles color, texture, furniture, and design in an environment built almost entirely around structural and mechanical trades. She's been doing it on camera since 2017, and she's been doing it well. What the show has never directly addressed is what a U.S. District Court formally put on the record. Ashley was diagnosed with Asperger's disorder, attention deficit disorder, sensory integration disorder, and autistic disorder. A court ruling in her case formally recognized these conditions as disabilities and recommended that she work in a structured environment no more than 8 hours per day, 5 days per week, within customary tolerances. Ashley Morrill has appeared in every season of Maine Cabin Masters. She continued through the EPA investigation, through cast departures, through the move from DIY Network to Magnolia Network, through the Italy spin-off, and through 12 seasons of renovations in remote locations across Maine, often in physically demanding and unpredictable settings. In 2023, she launched Rustic County, a home decor line built around her design aesthetic, centered on florals, nature, and Maine's particular visual identity. The business operates independently of the show. It was not a television project. It was an extension of the actual design work she had already been doing. The combination of those two facts, the court record and the business launch, is the part of Ashley's story that gets consistently overlooked. She's been managing a documented neurodevelopmental profile while building a television career, running a design business, and working in a physically demanding outdoor environment for close to a decade. That's the story. It just never gets told that way. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What she did instead is the part nobody talks about. In 2023, Chase Morrill did something that no one in the Maine Cabin Masters universe had done before. He went to Italy. Specifically, he contacted a rural property agency specializing in the Abruzzo and Molise regions of central Italy and started looking for a fixer-upper. Chase and his wife Sarah had talked for years about buying and restoring an old Italian property. They'd seen the coverage of Italian villages offering €1 homes and started taking it seriously. The idea was to do it while their 4 kids, Maggie, Nori, Eva, and Fletcher, were still young enough to be part of the project. Chase told House Beautiful at the time that they wanted to do it as a family, not as a retirement plan. The property they found was in a small village in the Molise region, a region that Italians sometimes jokingly refer to as the region that doesn't exist because it's the least visited and least covered part of the country. The purchase price was approximately $97,000. The building included former animal stables that needed to be converted into living space. Italian seismic regulations required that local contractors take the lead on structural work, which meant Chase and his crew were working alongside Italian tradespeople whose building methods, materials, and code requirements were substantially different from anything they'd encountered in Maine. The 6-episode spin-off, Maine Cabin Masters, Building Italy, premiered on June 17, 2024, on Magnolia Network and became available on Max and Discovery Plus in August 2024. Fan response was divided. Some viewers found it refreshing, particularly the inclusion of Chase's teenage children in the renovation work. Others felt the absence of Maine's visual identity made it feel like a different show entirely. Chase has been consistent on one point in interviews since. The crew's focus remains on Maine and the 27 area code. The Italy property is now a private family vacation home. No additional international seasons have been announced. One phone call, one conversation. That's all it took to change the direction of everything. On February 1, 2025, Dix passed away unexpectedly at Maine Medical Center in Portland, Maine. She was 48 years old. Her family was with her when she died. No cause of death was publicly disclosed. Gina was Matt Dix's wife. They had been married since September 26, 2001, nearly 24 years. They had 3 children, Michael, Lindsay, and Kylie. She was a nurse practitioner who had worked at the Harold Alphon Center for Cancer Care and at Maine Health Franklin Memorial Hospital in Farmington, having earned her master's degree in nursing from Purdue University in 2018. Before that, she had worked as a registered nurse for years. Her first nursing job after graduating from St. Anselm College had been at Pine Tree Camp in Rome, Maine. The Maine Cabin Masters posted the announcement on Instagram on February 5th, 4 days after she passed. The caption called her a huge part of the Maine Cabin Masters family. Ryan Eldridge, who had known Gina since childhood, they were born 2 years apart, on the same calendar day, posted his own tribute. He wrote that their parents had been best friends, that she had married his best friend, and that she had been part of the fabric of his life for as long as he could remember. The layer of this story that most coverage missed is what it meant for Dixie specifically. Matt Dix has always been one of the quieter presences on the show, the master carpenter who does finish work in a corner and speaks in short sentences that land with unexpected precision. He's private in a way that few reality TV personalities manage to remain after years of camera exposure. His life outside the show has always centered on hunting, fishing, Rangeley, and the rhythms of central Maine. He lost the person at the center of all of that. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. Season 12 of Maine Cabin Masters concluded its run on March 9, 2026. For a period of roughly 2 months after that finale, Magnolia Network had not issued a public renewal statement. Industry trackers listed the show's status as fate to be determined. Fan forums ran with it. There was genuine uncertainty about whether the show would continue. On May 16, 2026, Magnolia Network confirmed Season 13. The premiere date was set for May 25, 2026. The opening episode, titled Restoring an Island Legacy, follows Chase and the crew as they take on a lakeside cabin with off-grid constraints and island logistics, helping a homeowner honor the memory of her late husband by restoring the property they shared. The full core cast, Chase, Ashley, Ryan, Dixie, and Jedi, remains intact. The Woodshed, the restaurant and bar co-owned by Chase, Ryan, Ashley, and Jared Baker in Manchester, Maine, continues to operate. It functions as both a local gathering place and a destination for fans visiting from outside the state. Ryan Eldridge, whose original dream of owning a restaurant predated the show, is the driving force behind it. Chase's Italy property, now fully renovated, is a family vacation home. Kennebec Cabin Company runs out of Manchester, offering restoration services merchandise, and branded goods. Jared Baker, the enigmatic carpenter with the long beard, the hockey goalie habit, and the English setter named Susie, remains the least documented member of the cast, despite reportedly holding the highest net worth among them, estimated at somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million. He's been with the show since its first episode in 2017, without once trimming his beard. He has a reportedly hidden ability to execute an unusual breakdancing move that the show's official channels have teased, but never fully revealed. He is exactly what he appears to be, a craftsman from Gardner, Maine, who happens to be on television. The show itself has now produced over 170 episodes across 12 completed seasons, survived a network rebrand, a federal enforcement action, a global pandemic production shutdown, a spin-off in a foreign country, and the sudden personal loss of one of its most essential people. It is currently in its 13th season. Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. What the Maine Cabin Masters built isn't really a television show. It's a document of what happens when authentic craft meets genuine community, and someone decides to put cameras on it. These 5 people weren't assembled. They were already there. And 9 years into what was supposed to be a 10-episode first season on a cable network nobody remembers, they're still there. Ashley is running her own design business and appearing in every episode. Ryan finally has the restaurant he always wanted. Jedi is still refusing to touch his beard. Dixie is carrying something enormous and still showing up to work. Chase is a 10th-generation Mainer who bought a house in Italy and brought the whole crew with him, then came back to Maine and kept going. Season 13 is currently airing. The show is not going anywhere. The question is this: after everything this crew has been through, the federal investigation, the personal losses, the cast departures that were never explained, do you think this show is still the same one that debuted in 2017? Or has it become something completely different? Let us know in the comments below.